It's Patrick Hutzel from intensivecareathome.com.au, where we provide tailor-made solutions for long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomy by improving their quality of life, and where we also provide tailor-made solutions to hospitals and intensive care units to save money and resources whilst providing quality care. In last week's blog, I talked about long-term ventilation and tracheostomy in intensive care. 3 reasons why health consumers need to demand more. You can check out last week's blog if you're clicking on the link below this video. In this week's blog, I want to talk about ventilation and tracheostomy. How long is the intensive care stay? First up, Happy New Year to you, the reader of our blog. I hope you have a successful, happy and healthy New Year. Thank you for continuing to support Intensive Care at Home's cause and mission. Now, as you know, many critically ill patients in intensive care that end up ventilated with a tracheostomy by far exceed their projected length of stay in intensive care. And if you look at the medical conditions of long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomy who have exceeded their projected length of stay, they tend to be mainly medically stable, of inotropes and of sedation. And yet, many intensive care units and hospitals still work from a paradigm that patients, when they leave intensive care, either go to the ward or die. It's a very black and white approach, and it doesn't leave much room for flexibility, and it doesn't serve intensive care units, and it doesn't serve patients and their families. It's also a very conservative approach, and it doesn't take into consideration what our service is successfully already providing to our clients, and also what has successfully been done in many European countries for more than 15 years now, to take long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomy home, with intensive home care nursing services such as Intensive Care at Home. The upside of this approach is limitless, as it creates multiple win-win situations all around. It improves the quality of life, and in some instances the quality of end of life for long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies and their families. It also finally introduces massive cost savings for hospitals, Department of Health, private health funds and other health funding agencies who pay in excess of $4,500 for a bed day in intensive care. Furthermore, it also provides a holistic care model for long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies and their families. It also provides opportunities for patients and their families who can finally carry on with their lives, rather than staying in a limiting intensive care environment for months on end. It also frees up scarce, expensive, in-demand and precious intensive care beds that can be used for other, more acutely unwell patients in need of an intensive care bed. Families who previously put their lives on hold because their loved ones staying in ICU for long periods of time can finally go back to their lives, go back to their jobs, families, etc., rather than spending day and night in intensive care. If we keep long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies in intensive care for longer than necessary, society is paying a huge cost by having disrupted family lives, rather than providing a holistic service that takes into account the needs of all stakeholders, such as the patients, their families, intensive care units, hospitals, departments of health and private health insurances. Everybody who has worked in intensive care has seen, for example, a Guillain-Barré patient who has been in ICU for 6 months or longer because of their ventilator dependency, and they were otherwise medically stable. That Guillain-Barré patient could have been weaned off the ventilator at home and then continued their treatment in hospital after being weaned off the ventilator. They can be with their family rather than in intensive care, have a better quality of life, free up the ICU bed, and in the process save hundreds of thousands of dollars of precious taxpayers' money. It's a no-brainer. What are your thoughts? Do you think that it's time for intensive care units to embrace the extension of their services into a home care environment for long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies? Leave your comments on the blog below. Please also note that intensive care at home has been selected as a preferred provider for Queensland Health as part of a hospital in the home tender. We are also currently hiring enthusiastic and experienced intensive care nurses with critical care certificate for a ventilated Melbourne client close to CBD. For more information, check out our career section or contact me on 041 094 2230. You can also contact me if you want to know more about how we can help you, your intensive care unit, and your patients and families. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecareathome.com.au, and I'll see you again next week in another update.